Mystery of Studio O, Part 1. The Voice from the Dark. It was the summer of 1991. Behind the towering wall of global fame, Michael Jackson spent most of his quiet nights alone inside his private music studio. For Michael, midnight was the only hour when the relentless pressure of the outside world fell silent, allowing him to lose himself entirely in his creation. The antique clock on the wall had just struck 3 a.m. The room was bathed in dim amber light. Michael sat at his black grand piano, gently pressing the keys in pursuit of a melody that had been echoing in his dreams. Suddenly, a faint metallic click echoed through the room. The power indicators on the main mixing console equipment that had been powered down hours ago flickered to life with a low, blood-red glow. Click! The heavy reel-to-reel tape began to spin on its own. A moment later, a haunting sound drifted from the studio monitors. It was a voice, his own voice. He was listening to himself singing a breathtaking unreleased melody, accompanied by lyrics that softly whispered details of a future event that had not yet occurred. A cold shiver ran down Michael's spine. He stood up slowly, knowing with absolute certainty that he had never written, let alone recorded, a single note of that track. Mystery of Studio OO, Part 2, Locked in the Dark. Michael froze, his eyes fixed on the spinning magnetic tape. The haunting melody continued to fill the silent studio, carrying lyrics that detailed events that hadn't even happened yet. Determined to stop the playback, Michael reached out toward the control board. But before his fingers could touch the switches, a heavy metallic thud echoed through the room. The solid wooden doors of the studio locked shut automatically from the outside. The main lights flickered violently and died, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the crimson glow of the mixing console remained. Michael turned toward the double-paned glass panel separating the live room from the control booth. Through the dark reflection, he saw a silhouette standing on the other side. The figure wore a sleek fedora tilted low over its face, and a single sequined glove on its left hand, an exact, chilling replica of Michael himself. The shadow did not move. It slowly raised its gloved hand, pointed directly at the control panel, and whispered through the studio speakers, "Listen closely, Michael. This recording is not from your past. It is from your future." Mystery of Studio OO, Part 3, The Trapdoor. Beneath the floor. The distorted voice echoed through the monitors before cutting out into harsh static. Michael stood frozen, his heart pounding against his ribs. The shadowed figure behind the control room glass vanished into the darkness as fast as it had appeared. Michael stepped toward the control booth, but the glass was empty. He was entirely alone again in the dimly lit room. Remembering the figure's warning, Michael looked down at the wooden floorboards beneath his feet. He dropped to his knees, running his hands over the polished oak panels. Near the base of the grand piano, his fingers caught on a subtle seam in the wood. He pushed against the edge, and a hidden hatch unlocked with a soft mechanical click. Beneath the studio floor lay a narrow, spiraling stone staircase descending into complete darkness, a passage that was never included in the blueprints of his estate. From the bottom of the dark staircase, the faint sound of that mysterious piano melody began to play once more, inviting him down into the unknown. Mystery of Studio Bobo, Part 4, Into the Abyss. Michael pulled a small metallic flashlight from his jacket pocket and switched it on. The thin beam of light sliced through the pitch-black air of the stairwell, revealing damp stone steps leading deep underground. Every instinct screamed at him to stay put, but his relentless curiosity pushed him forward. Taking a slow, measured breath, Michael stepped onto the first stone step. The air grew colder with every downward step, carrying a faint smell of old paper and ozone. As he reached the bottom of the staircase, the narrow path opened into a vast, hidden archive. Rows of metal shelves stretched out into the shadows, filled with dusty film reels, vinyl test pressings, and sealed leather journals. At the center of the room sat a single wooden desk. Illuminated by a solitary overhead lamp was a glowing brass record player. The needle rested on a pitch-black vinyl record, spinning silently. Beside the record player lay an open journal. Michael stepped closer, his heart skipping a beat as he recognized his own handwriting on the page, written in ink that looked completely fresh. Mystery of Studio 00, Part 5, The Unwritten Diary. Michael reached toward the journal, his hand trembling slightly. The date stamped at the top of the page read, August 25th, 2026, a date far into the future. Underneath the date, the handwriting detailed a series of musical notes, precise chords, and lyrics that perfectly matched the haunting melody he had just heard upstairs. But below the music, a paragraph was written in bold, frantic strokes. If you are reading this, Michael, you have found the vault of tomorrow. The music you hear is not created by chance. It is a key meant to prevent the erasure of your life's work. Suddenly, the brass record player clicked, and the music stopped abruptly. The heavy stone door behind him slammed shut with a deafening crash, sealing the underground archive shut. From the far end of the darkened rows of shelves, the rhythmic sound of polished leather shoes clicking against the stone floor began to approach. Mystery of Studio 00, Part 6, The Man in the Shadow. The footsteps grew closer, each heavy strike of leather against stone echoing through the silent cavern. Michael backed away slowly until his hands pressed against the cold edge of the wooden desk, keeping his flashlight pointed straight ahead. Out of the darkness stepped an elderly man wearing a sharp vintage suit. His hair was silver and his sharp, intelligent eyes fixed directly onto Michael. He carried an antique silver pocket watch, ticking softly in his palm. "You shouldn't be down here yet, Michael," the old man said, his voice calm yet commanding. The timeline in this archive was built to remain hidden until the world was ready. "Who are you?" Michael asked, holding his ground. "And how do you have a journal written in my own hand?" The man clicked his pocket watch shut. "I am the guardian of Studio 00. This room exists outside the boundaries of normal time. Everything you have ever composed and everything you have yet to compose is recorded here to preserve your true legacy." The old man pointed toward a massive vault door at the back of the room, sealed with 4 heavy iron wheels. "Someone is trying to alter history from the inside," the guardian warned. "And if they succeed, every song you ever gave to the world will vanish from memory forever." Mystery of Studio 00, Part 7, The Master Key. Michael stared at the massive iron vault door, a surge of adrenaline washing away his fear. The thought of his music, the love and energy he had poured into the world being wiped out was far more terrifying than any shadow in the dark. "Who is doing this?" Michael demanded, stepping closer to the guardian. "How can anyone erase music that has already touched millions of hearts?" The guardian unlocked a small velvet box on the desk, revealing an ornate silver key shaped like a treble clef. "Music is not just sound, Michael," the guardian explained. "It is emotional energy. There are forces that wish to drain that light from the world, leaving humanity in perpetual darkness. The person behind this is someone from your inner circle, someone who has access to your master tapes." Before Michael could ask for a name, the entire underground chamber shuddered. Dust rained down from the stone ceiling, and the red indicators on the vault door began to flash wildly. "They have breached the primary mainframe," the guardian shouted over the sudden sirens. "Take the key, Michael. You must open the vault before the master tapes are corrupted." Michael grabbed the cold silver key, but as he ran toward the vault, a thick wall of black smoke erupted between him and the door. Mystery of Studio 00, Part 8, The Shadow's Face. The dense black smoke spiraled upward, filling the underground vault with a bitter, metallic haze. Michael covered his mouth with his sleeve, coughing violently as he shielded the silver key against his chest. Through the thick gloom, a figure slowly stepped out from the smoke. It was the same silhouette Michael had seen through the studio window, dressed in his exact outfit, holding a glowing digital device that was actively transmitting data from the vault's master drive. "Give up the key, Michael," the figure spoke. But this time, the voice was not distorted. It belonged to Arthur, Michael's head sound engineer and trusted friend of over 10 years. Michael stood in shock, his mind racing. "Arthur, why are you doing this?" "Because your music is too powerful," Arthur replied, his eyes cold and devoid of remorse. "It connects people, gives them hope, and keeps them strong. My employers want control over that influence. Once I wipe the master frequencies, Your songs will become nothing more than empty noise. Arthur raised his hand, pointing a heavy magnetic disruptor directly at the iron vault door. The metal began to hum dangerously, vibrating toward a total system crash. Michael gripped the treble clef key tighter, stepping directly into Arthur's path. Not while I'm still breathing. Mystery of Studio. Oh, Part 9. The Rhythm of Defense. Arthur sneered, raising the magnetic disruptor higher. A high-pitched screech echoed through the chamber as invisible energy waves rippled from the device, cracking the nearby stone walls and threatening to shatter the glass display cases. Michael did not flinch. Decades of performing under blinding lights and intense pressure had taught him how to read a room, control the rhythm, and trust his instincts. He noticed the disruptor flashed in rhythm with its power. Pulse, a distinct 3-beat cycle. Waiting for the third pulse, Michael ducked beneath the invisible beam just as Arthur pulled the trigger. The beam struck a stone pillar behind him, exploding into a shower of sparks. Using his speed and precision, Michael lunged forward, executing a swift spin to bypass Arthur's defense. He struck Arthur's wrist with the heel of his palm, forcing the sound engineer to drop the disruptor onto the stone floor. The device skidded across the ground and crashed against the desk, its magnetic field shutting off immediately. "You don't understand the power of music, Arthur," Michael said, standing between his former friend and the vault door. "It doesn't belong to you, and it doesn't belong to your employers. It belongs to the world." Michael turned toward the massive iron vault door, inserting the silver treble clef key directly into the central keyhole. As he turned it, 4 heavy iron wheels began to spin in unison. Mystery of Studio O, Part 10. Inside the sound core, with a heavy hydraulic hiss, the massive iron vault door unsealed and slowly swung open. A blinding beam of pure golden light poured out into the dark stone chamber, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Michael shielded his eyes for a moment before stepping through the threshold. Inside was not an ordinary storage room, but a vast spherical chamber suspended over a glowing chasm of sonic energy. Floating in the center of the room was a massive crystalline sphere, the core of master frequencies, where every vibration, lyric, and melody Michael had ever conceived was stored in light. However, dark purple fractures were already spreading across the sphere's surface. Arthur's corrupting signal had already begun its work. Suddenly, Arthur shoved past Michael, lunging for the main control pedestal. He held a secondary override drive in his hand, ready to inject the final wipe sequence. "You're too late!" Arthur shouted, his voice echoing off the metallic walls. "The corruption is at 90%. Once this drive connects, your legacy is erased." Without hesitation, Michael bounded across the narrow platform. Instead of grabbing the drive, he placed both hands directly on the crystalline sphere, allowing his own vocal pitch to resonance with the core. Mystery of Studio OO, Part 11. The Golden Resonance. As Michael touched the smooth, warm surface of the crystal, a sharp shockwave of energy surged up his arms. The purple fractures pulsed aggressively, fighting against his touch. Closing his eyes, Michael ignored the pain and began to hum. He matched his voice to the absolute root frequency of the core, a pure, resonant hum that vibrated through the entire chamber. The golden light inside the sphere flared brightly, reacting to its creator. One by one, the dark purple cracks stopped spreading, neutralized by the pure harmonic pitch of his voice. "Stop it!" Arthur screamed, raising his fist to smash the control pedestal. Before Arthur could strike, the Guardian stepped through the vault door, holding a heavy copper dampening rod. With a swift movement, the Guardian pressed the rod against Arthur's mechanical override drive. Sparks erupted, short-circuiting the device and sending Arthur stumbling backward onto the platform. The purple fractures vanished completely from the crystalline sphere, restored to a flawless, brilliant gold. Michael opened his eyes and took a deep breath as the hum faded into a gentle harmonic chord. But just as they thought the danger was over, a loud, mechanical countdown began to echo from the primary console. Self-destruct sequence initiated. Time remaining 3 minutes. Mystery of Studio OO, Part 12. The Race Against Zero. Red emergency lights flashed violently across the vault walls. painting the golden sphere in sinister crimson hues. The mechanical voice repeated its cold warning. 2 minutes and 40 seconds remaining. Arthur scrambled to his feet, panic overcoming his earlier malice. Seeing that the system was set to implode, he turned and sprinted back toward the exit, abandoning his gear and fleeing into the dark corridors. "We have to shut down the central reactor manually," the Guardian shouted over the deafening sirens. He rushed toward the main control console, frantically typing overrides into the terminal. The main override panel is located on the lower catwalk beneath the energy core, but it requires 2 synchronized codes. Michael looked down over the edge of the platform into the deep chasm. A narrow iron ladder led down toward the lower manual controls, surrounded by swirling bursts of raw sonic power. "Tell me the code," Michael said without hesitation, gripping the ladder's edge.
"You must input the frequency numbers of your first 3 world hits," the Guardian replied, his hands flying across the screen. "I will stabilize the core from up here. But if the counter hits 0, this entire facility and every master record inside will collapse into nothingness." Michael nodded, swinging his legs over the edge and climbing down into the roaring light below. Mystery of Studio 00, Part 13, The Echo of Hits. Michael climbed down the icy iron rungs as violent bursts of sonic energy surged around him, illuminating the vast cavern in blinding flashes of light. 1 minute remaining, the automated voice bellowed, its echo reverberating through the structure. Reaching the narrow lower catwalk, Michael dropped onto the steel grid. In front of him stood a heavy bronze console featuring 3 glowing numeric dials. Sparks flew from the surrounding cables, but the display screen remained operational, waiting for the correct input sequences. He needed the exact root frequencies of his first 3 signature tracks. Michael closed his eyes for a split second, blocking out the chaos. He recalled the precise studio mix of Off the Wall, dialing in 044 on the first wheel. The first indicator turned from red to steady green, 45 seconds. Next, he visualized the iconic bass line of Billie Jean. Twisting the second dial to 117, the machine hummed in approval, locking the second green light into place. Finally, with only 20 seconds on the clock, he recalled the dark, driving tempo of Thriller. His hands moved with lightning speed, setting the final dial to 138. The 3 green lights flashed in unison. Michael slammed his hand onto the main reset button just as the timer hit 001. The deafening sirens stopped instantly. The red warning lights vanished, replaced by a warm, steady golden glow as the reactor returned to perfect equilibrium. Mystery of Studio 00, Part 14. The Dawn of a New Legacy. The mechanical hum softened into a soothing, low vibration. High above the catwalk, the massive crystalline sphere glowed with an absolute, unshakable brilliance, radiating warmth back into the underground archive. Michael climbed back up the iron ladder, taking a deep, steadying breath as he reached the main platform. The Guardian stood by the console, letting out a heavy sigh of relief as he watched the safety monitor stabilize. "You saved it, Michael," the Guardian said softly, offering a respectful bow. "The frequencies are secured, not just for your lifetime, but for generations to come. No one can ever erase what you've built." Near the entrance of the vault, security alarms cut through the silence. Armed guards from the main estate had finally arrived, having tracked Arthur's unauthorized access. They quickly apprehended the former engineer, leading him away into the upper corridors. Michael turned back to the Guardian, looking around the incredible subterranean library one last time. "Will I ever need to come back down here?" The Guardian smiled gently and closed his leather journal. "Only in your dreams, Michael. Whenever you write a new song, a part of you will always be connected to this room." As dawn began to break outside, Michael climbed the spiraling stone staircase back up to Studio 00. He stepped into the warm morning light, streaming through the studio windows, sat down at his black grand piano, and played the first golden note of a brand new song. The end.